When Rohan dragged my suitcase out of the bedroom and dropped it near the front door, the sound echoed louder than his voice. "Pack your things, Anaya," he said flatly. "I'm done pretending." Pretending, I stood by the dining table, fingers resting on the polished wood I had personally chosen from an Italian supplier. The chandelier above us shimmered softly, a custom design I had approved during a midnight video call with Milan. But to him, I was just a woman who sat at home. "I don't understand," I said quietly. He laughed, not warmly, not kindly. "That's the problem. You don't understand ambition. You sit there with your little online thing, typing away like it matters. Little online thing." 5 years of marriage, and he had never once asked what I truly did. In the beginning, he used to sit beside me while I worked late nights. He'd bring coffee, ask questions, tell me he was proud that I was creative, but promotions changed him. Titles changed him. People at corporate dinners changed him. "You know what my colleagues say," he continued. "Their wives help them network, they host events, they contribute, and you hide behind a laptop, hide." If only he knew that the laptop he mocked connected me to investors in Singapore, developers in Berlin, and contracts worth millions. I had built my company from a one-bedroom apartment before we were even married. I kept it quiet not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't want our relationship to turn into competition. Yet here we were. "I need a partner who matches my level," he said sharply. "Not someone small." Small? That word settled heavily in my chest, not painful, just final. I walked slowly to the suitcase and zipped it closed. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. "Are you asking me to leave?" I asked. "I'm telling you to," he replied. "You wouldn't survive a month without me anyway." That almost made me smile. This house, my silent investment, his latest car upgrade, leased through a holding company under my firm. The down payment for his mother's medical treatment, transferred from an account he never questioned. But I never corrected him, because love shouldn't require proof of power. I picked up the suitcase. At the door, I paused and looked back at the man who once held my hand like I was his world. "I hope," I said softly, "one day you understand what you've just done." He didn't respond. He believed he had removed something insignificant from his life. He didn't know he had just dismissed the foundation beneath his feet. And tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, Rohan walked into the glass tower of Ardent Global Solutions with the confidence of a man who believed he was winning at life. He barely slept, not because of me, but because today was critical. The company was finalizing negotiations with a powerful tech investor who was planning to acquire a significant stake. If this deal closed smoothly, his promotion to regional director was practically guaranteed. He adjusted his tie in the elevator mirror, rehearsing his opening pitch. By the time he entered the boardroom, senior executives were already seated. His boss, Mr. Khanna, looked unusually tense. "Good morning, sir," Rohan said, placing his laptop on the table. "I'm ready to present." Mr. Khanna cleared his throat. "The investors have arrived." The double doors opened. I walked in, not in soft sweaters and loose hair like he was used to seeing at home. Today, I wore a tailored charcoal suit, structured and sharp. My heels clicked steadily against the marble floor. Behind me followed 2 senior partners and our legal advisor. The air shifted. Rohan's expression froze. I didn't look at him immediately. I moved to the head of the table, the seat reserved for primary stakeholders, and placed my leather folder down calmly. "Good morning," I began professionally. "I'm Anaya Mehta, founder and CEO of Synexus Technologies. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss this strategic acquisition." The words landed like controlled explosions. "Founder, CEO." Mr. Khanna quickly added, "Synexus will be acquiring 40% equity in Ardent Global. They will also oversee technology restructuring." Rohan stared at me as if reality had cracked open. His lips parted slightly. "Anaya," I finally met his eyes. No anger, no satisfaction, just clarity. "This is a formal setting, Mr. Rohan Mehta," I said evenly. "Let's maintain professionalism." A faint murmur spread across the table. The surname connection was now obvious. He swallowed hard and sat down slowly. The presentation began. Ironically, He was leading the strategic overview, explaining to my company why Ardent was worthy of investment. His voice, usually smooth and confident, carried a slight tremor. Slides flashed across the screen: revenue growth, expansion plans, market projections. I listened carefully, occasionally jotting notes. Every statistic he proudly presented was something my analysts had already evaluated. Every forecast had been stress-tested by my board weeks ago, yet I let him speak, because sometimes the most powerful position isn't proving someone wrong. It's letting them realize they never truly knew you. When he finished, silence hung in the room. I folded my hands gently on the table. "Thank you, Mr. Mehta," I said formally. "We have a few clarifications before proceeding." And for the first time in his life, Rohan understood something terrifying. The woman he called foolish last night was the one holding his future in her hands. The boardroom felt smaller now. Not because of the walls, but because of the tension pressing in from every corner. Rohan stood near the screen, remote still in his hand, trying to regain the composure that had once made him the star performer of Ardent Global. A thin sheen of sweat had formed near his temple, though the air conditioning hummed steadily above us. "Before we move forward," I said calmly, flipping through a set of documents, "I'd like clarification regarding slide 14, the predictive analytics framework." He nodded quickly. "Of course, that's our proprietary model designed to optimize regional expansion." Proprietary, the word lingered. I signaled to my operations director. Within seconds, a different file appeared on the screen behind him. A blueprint, clean, detailed, time-stamped. The Synexis Technologies watermark sat in the bottom right corner. Dated 8 months ago. A quiet ripple moved across the table. Rohan turned slowly to look at the screen. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition to fear. "This model," I continued evenly, "is structurally identical to one developed by my firm last year, including algorithmic sequencing and projected margin mapping. Mr. Khanna leaned forward sharply. "Rohan, it's a coincidence," Rohan said quickly. "Industry standards overlap, it's common." I met his gaze, steady and unblinking. "Even the internal coding errors?" I asked softly. Another slide appeared, highlighting a unique placeholder mistake our team had intentionally embedded during testing. A flaw only visible to those with direct access. The room went silent, his jaw tightened. I may have referenced industry reports. Industry reports didn't have access to private beta frameworks. But I wasn't here to humiliate him. I was here to protect my company. Integrity, I said calmly, addressing the board rather than him, is the foundation of any partnership. Synexis does not invest in talent alone. We invest in trust. Every executive in the room understood the implication. This wasn't just a professional mistake. It was a breach. Mr. Khanna's disappointment was visible. "Rohan, we will discuss this internally." The meeting adjourned shortly after. Conversations erupted in hushed tones as executives stepped outside. Rohan remained frozen near the screen. When the room finally emptied, he approached me slowly. "You did this to punish me," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No, you did this to yourself." His shoulders slumped, not in anger this time, but in realization. "You could have warned me," he whispered. I looked at him for a long moment. "I could have," I agreed. "But you were too busy believing I was small." The weight of that truth seemed heavier than any accusation. I gathered my folder and stood. "This isn't revenge, Rohan," I said gently. "This is accountability." As I walked out of the boardroom, I didn't feel victorious. I felt certain. He had asked me to leave his life because he thought I added nothing to it. Now he understood something far more painful. He had underestimated the very person who built the ground he stood on. 3 weeks after the meeting, the acquisition was finalized. Synexis Technologies officially secured a 40% stake in Ardent Global Solutions. The media praised it as a strategic masterstroke. Analysts called it visionary leadership. But inside the company, the atmosphere was different. An internal investigation had quietly concluded. Rohan wasn't fired. That would have created public scandal and instability. Instead, he was reassigned to a compliance and auditing division in a smaller regional branch. No leadership authority, No high-profile projects, no executive boardroom access, a position where he would have to rebuild his credibility from the ground up. It wasn't cruel, it was measured. I signed the final documents in my office overlooking the city skyline. The same city where, just weeks ago, I'd walked out of my marriage with a single suitcase. The divorce papers arrived the next day. Rohan requested to see me once before signing. I agreed. We met in a quiet cafe, neutral ground, no boardroom. No home, no power imbalance, just two people sitting across from each other, separated by choices. He looked different. Not broken, just humbled. I didn't know. He began softly. I stirred my tea but didn't interrupt. I didn't know you were building something that big. I didn't know you were you. You never asked. I replied gently. He nodded, accepting that. I thought I was the ambitious one. He admitted. I thought I was carrying us. You were carrying your ego. I said not harshly, just truthfully. He exhaled slowly. I was insecure. Every time I saw you working quietly, not needing validation, it made me feel smaller. The irony almost made me smile. You called me foolish, I reminded him. His eyes dropped, I know, and I was wrong. For the first time in a long time, there was no competition in his voice. No superiority, just accountability. I loved you, he said quietly. I loved you too. I answered. But love, without respect, turns into survival, and I won't survive in my own marriage. The papers sat between us. He signed first, so did I. There were no dramatic tears, no shouting, just the quiet understanding that some lessons arrive too late. A month later, I stood on stage at the Global Women in Leadership Summit, sharing my journey, not as a story of revenge, but of self-worth. Never shrink yourself to protect someone else's pride. I told the audience, if they can't celebrate your growth, they were never meant to grow beside you. The applause filled the hall. And somewhere in the crowd, I saw Rohan, clapping, not as my husband, not as a superior, but as a man who finally understood that the woman he once asked to leave was never small. She was simply waiting to be seen.